So today's guest knows the meaning of putting in the work. Having consulted for the likes of Dr. Dre, LL Cool J and The Rock, his business ventures are all about understanding the education, designing the programming and producing the content for the benefit of everyone. Not only is he king of creating endlessly challenging workouts, he's a Yale research scientist who has mastered the importance of nutrition and revolutionary supplements that fuel your body. So that we can learn about his blend of proprietary ingredients for lifetime fitness, please welcome founder of JYM Supplement Science, Dr. Jim Stoppani, to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Welcome, Jim.
Oh, thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Well, actually, pleasure to have you here in my gym here in Hollywood. So
thank you very much.
No, thank you for coming.
And you were saying you've been here for about a year, is that right?
Yeah, just about. It'll be a year, January 2019.
Right. And what caused you to sort of set this up? Had you had a training studio before, or was this always a bit of a dream?
Yeah, well, definitely it's definitely a dream come true. I really love being here, but I grew up training in my father's basement at home, and he built a pretty magnificent gym with very little. So I've always been training, and going into the gym has been a bit of, sort of that, there's a lot of solitude, and it's a time to sort of think. But there's also a social aspect of training too. So, sometimes I love going into a busy gym, like Gold's Gym, and training, with my friends. But a lot of times I love just training alone, and coming in. And so, having this spot here, it's both a gym, it's a studio, and it's a lab, really, because really this is, where I come up with the ideas and the concepts. But prior to having this one here, we had space out in Westlake Village, which is, it's a bit of a drive from here, but my business partner lives out there. So it's, it's easy for him to be over there doing sort of the post-production stuff so that he doesn't have to commute back and forth. So we had a small little studio gym there, but it was too far. So this is only 2 miles from my home. Allows me to come in here and not just train, not just shoot, not just do a lot of the live events that we do, but to really come in here and think and develop, like you said, those programs, new exercise ideas, and it's like I said, it's really a lab,
right?
But in my place of solitude at the same time.
Yeah.
So love it.
So do you have clients come here? Do you have do you personal training or anything like that?
So I do none right now, and really over the last probably decade or two, really, it's I've been so busy with the supplement line, and just the programming that I do right now. I do a series called Train with Jim. And so it's my own, and I've been doing this for, almost 2 years now, but it's my own workouts. And so like the workout that I'll do today, I put up free. So everyone, you can go to my social media, get the workout. But not just that, it'll have a link back to the program. You can go where I explain, the program, how to do it. And then I do these lives every few days on exercise technique, what's ahead in the program, but it's all free. And so coming in here, being able to do that has just been, amazing.
Right.
I love this place.
So where did you start out? I heard you were working out when you were 7 years old. Is that true?
Oh yeah. So like I said, my father. So I sort of grew up in a very, I'd say, very fit family from both sides. My mom's side and my dad's side. So my dad's side, his father was a professional boxer. He died before I was even born, so I never got to know him. But on my mother's side, she had a cousin who was on the U.S. Olympic weightlifting team. So on both sides, everybody trained. So I was surrounded, surrounded by weightlifting. So I was always, I guess I should say, aspired to, have that strength. You know what I mean? It was like sort of just a masculine thing. All the guys and our family were, known for being, strong or athletic. And so, it meant a lot to me, and identified with that. I loved being active. I played baseball, I raced motocross. I just loved being active. So I really identified with that. And at an early age, my father would have the Joe Weider magazines. Back then it was Muscle Builder or Muscle Power Builder, but there were a few variations before Muscle and Fitness. And so, I loved to read as a kid. So I would read those magazines front and back, learn everything I could about training, about muscle fiber type, about nutrition, and I really applied it. So not only would I go down and train with my father, but I would train on my own. I would have my buddies come over. We would do the workouts that I would get in the magazines, the Joe Weider workouts. But I also started cooking for myself too, because I wanted to make sure I was getting, enough protein, the right types of carbohydrates. So even when I was around probably 8, 9, I was,
Oh, really?
cooking my own. Oh, yeah. I was very interested in nutrition and getting my parents to buy the, Joe Weider protein powders and the weight gainers. So I've been doing it since I could remember. It's hard for me to think of a time where I wasn't interested in getting stronger or getting more muscular, ever since, a young kid. There's a cartoon of this kid with his mom measuring his arm, and it's, and she's like, what do you mean it's the same as yesterday?
I remember doing that.
You know what I mean? It's like that was me. I have measurements going, back. I was like 5 years old. How big are my biceps now? So, but yeah, I've been literally been hungry to learn how to get stronger and bigger since I could remember. Right.
And then when did you think about turning that into some sort of career or business then?
As we graduate high school, I think that's the time when we really start thinking about, what's next for me. And I was training and very heavily involved in sports when I was in high school, mainly, like I said, motocross and bodybuilding. I was competing as a teenage bodybuilder. So I thought, I was also an artist as well, so I was very interested in anatomical illustration and possibly going into art school. So I debated either going into more science or into art school, and I figured I would go into sports medicine, which sort of suited, like I said, what I identified with, and at the time when I got into sports medicine, quote unquote, there really wasn't much weight training resistance research going on.
Really?
The exercise science back in the mid, I graduated high school in 1986, so exercise science back then was cardio. If you really go back and think about and look at the history of what the American College of Sports Medicine was studying back in 1986, they weren't studying the bench press. They weren't studying, what strength training, what the benefits were of strength training. They were looking at the benefits of cardio, solely cardio. Really, that's what exercise science was. So I really didn't know, what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with strength training in bodybuilding and making a career out of it, but what I do now, back then, wasn't an option. The career I created was sort of one that, I created on my own. It wasn't like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be a writer or a training expert. But I figured I'd start studying sports medicine. It was, there was nobody at the high school that could really sort of direct me and say, oh, you love, science and you love weight training, go into exercise. There was no real, there wasn't really even a real field at the time, for that. And so I ended up going to University of Connecticut for sports medicine, which was athletic training, dealing with sport injuries. But luckily, my advisor was a guy named William Kramer. And I don't know if that name resonates with you, but Bill Kramer, he's been heavily involved in the National Strength and Conditioning Association, Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research. But Bill, prior to Bill Kramer and a few other individuals, like Mike Stone at Appalachian State, the field of resistance research really took place. And like I said, I was lucky enough to have Bill Kramer as my advisor at UConn, but he wasn't even Bill Kramer then. He was just out of school, you know, the new assistant professor, and he would talk to me about things like how much growth hormone goes up when you're doing a bench press, or testosterone on the squat. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are you studying? And so I realized that it wasn't athletic training and sports medicine that I wanted to study. It was exercise physiology, you know. And now I'm, you know, opening up to this whole field that prior to growing up in Torrington, Connecticut, this small blue-collar town, you know, nobody could really direct me. Finally, you know, I'm sitting across from the person that I should be sitting across.
Why do you think there wasn't any, why do you think they'd focused on cardio and there hadn't been any strength research? Was there just no commercial need to do that at the time, do you think?
It's fear of what we don't know, you know, like supplements. You know, you ask a medical doctor about supplements and he'll tell you, oh, you shouldn't mess with any. You can get everything you need from nutrition. He can't direct that. He can't speak intelligently about supplements, so he fears them. So he just says, you know, avoid it. And so, you know, I think it's really, you know, just fear of the unknown. When I graduated with a master's degree in exercise science, I worked in cardiac rehabilitation. You weren't allowed to put a cardiac patient on a weight training program. You were not allowed, they were not allowed to weight lift. Today, that's completely ridiculous. We know just how safe weight training is in the way that the body responds. And so I think there was a lot of fear. Athletes are told not to get muscle bound because you'll be slow, you'll be too big, you know. So there was a lot of misinformation.
And that was just in the mid 80s then that this was.
Exactly.
Wow.
You know, right. You know, I mean, you know, really resistance training and the science of resistance training is a very, very new field. You know, the things we know about muscle growth aren't because there's scientists going, how do we get bigger biceps? It's because we're trying to prevent things like muscle atrophy in geriatric patients, you know? And so it's hard to really take massive leaps forward when there's really a field that's just starting to take off. It's just now starting to take off. Now we're getting, you know, there's people who are inspired by me to go into exercise science. Now we're getting people who were inspired, like I was, by bodybuilding and weight training to go into the science of it. Now we're going to start, I think, seeing more research in that area because other people are going, hey, I kind of want to do what Jim is doing. I want to do what these other guys out there are doing. And, you know, there's just more and more people who are getting involved and starting to answer those questions. So, and
just on that then, like, so obviously for younger people and for aesthetic reasons, you know, having a nice shapely body with muscle is great. I can see the benefit, but beyond that, in terms of quality of life or prolonging life, is there any other health reasons why people should be looking at strength training, researching strength training, and doing strength training, do you think?
Of course. Well, like I said, old people, right? I'm 51. I'll be 51 in January, right? We're getting older. And as we get older, we lose muscle tissue. And what is the muscle tissue that we lose? Fast twitch muscle tissue. The most critical tissue for strength and power. And so as we age, we start losing fast twitch muscle power, fast twitch muscle fibers. What does that mean for the quality of life? You can't carry your groceries, you can't walk up stairs, right? You can't even push a door open because you don't have the power to generate that. What is the best thing for an older person to do then? To train with heavy weights, right? To target the fast twitch muscle fibers, or train explosively, like an Olympic lifter, to again target the fast twitch muscle fibers. That's the best way to target fast twitch muscle fibers, is either fast explosive movements, right? Like power cleans, squat jumps, or with heavy weight for low reps. So how do we combat muscle loss as we're getting older? By creating programs that are designed to target the muscle that's being lost. You can't take an old person and go, okay, come on, Larry, you're 89, okay, just keep it light and do 20 reps, because you're old, right? Sure, he's working out, but is the workout really helping him? No, he's losing fast twitch muscle fibers. You've got him at weight that's so light because you think he's so frail, right, that it's not doing him any good. So let's really start looking and creating programs for the population that is actually helping them. Right? And so, like I said, for an older person, the best thing that they should be doing is training heavy. Most people would never tell a 70 or 80-year-old person, go to the bench press and do 3 to 5 reps.
No.
Right? Oh, no, right?
And is that
why?
not
Why
dangerous
is that?
for people to, I guess as you're getting older, you've got to be more conscious of getting injured.
But again, if we're talking about somebody who's working with a trainer,
right,
who has somebody holding their hand, making sure every rep is done properly with the proper form. There's no reason that a person can't perform 3 to 5 reps on an exercise if their form is correct, and once the form breaks, the set ends. Right? That's really when the set should end, is when the form breaks. And so if you're taking somebody who's going through a program with a trainer, they should be able to
identify that.
Yes, exactly. And so you're creating better programs.
Okay.
And again, it's you're not just taking somebody in the first day and going, do 3 to 5 reps to failure. You know what I'm saying? It's progress. You're building them up to that point.
Right.
But again, it's sort of, the way that a lot of people look at things, it's like, well, that's just off limits for old. You can't train heavy. You're too old. Why? My father's 74 years old, and he's at the booth with me. I don't know if you've ever met my father, but no. He does the grip strength challenge. He's at the booth, all 74 years old, lifting, doing these strength challenges, demonstrating. 74. He's, like I said, age is I think something that again, it gets back to being fearful and not being able to help people because we put limits without understanding why we're putting those limits on. And so, people like Joe Weider, if you look at Joe Weider, Tim and I were looking at sort of some of the old stuff. He was predicting what are the health benefits of weightlifting. He was predicting that in the future, we would see a need for weightlifting for not just athletes, but for health reasons, to prevent metabolic disorders, heart disease, inflammatory disorders. And now we know that resistance training is important. The American College of Sports Medicine no longer suggests for their recommendations of how much exercise only cardio. That's their old recommendation used to be 30 minutes of cardio, 3 to 4 times. That was it.
Right, yeah.
That was the American College of Sports Medicine's recommendations for activity. Now it specifically has not just cardio, but also resistance training in the recommendations, because we know that the many health benefits of resistance training or metabolic disorders. We know that people with type 2 diabetes who are put on an exercise program. And when I say an exercise program, I'm not just talking about cardio, I'm talking about a full-on resistance training program. You know, the real problem with cardio is it's only half the body, right? Unless you're doing rowing, unless, you know what I mean? Yeah. When we really look at cardio, we're looking at running, we're looking at cycling, right? It's half the body. You're only using half the body, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so that's a problem right there. So why do you need resistance training? Well, because most cardio is only attacking half the body. You know, it's not stimulating the muscle fibers in the rest of the body. And what are the health benefits of any exercise? It's from stimulating those muscle fibers, right? Which causes change in the environment in that cell, and that changes metabolic changes, structural changes, and those are, you know, the metabolic changes are the things that prevent type 2 diabetes, because it allows you to use fat better. It allows you to control glucose levels, right? And so being able to exercise and train your body to use those fuels properly leads to, you know, better health, because we don't have those, you know, metabolic issues. The body knows, you know, how to handle those substrates, those fuels that we're taking in.
Right. And I know with, if people want to lose fat, cardio's kind of the go-to sort of way of training. What's your thoughts on that then, for people who probably haven't worked out before then? You know, what part does cardio play?
Yeah, you know, it's so funny the way that people view working out, because I know someone who will, before he starts his workout program, will start a diet and say, well, I just want to lose 10, 20 pounds, then I'll start the workout program, which, you know, just dumbfounds me. But it's, you know, the way that we sort of present things to ourselves and, you know, try to, I guess, you know, fool ourselves into not wanting to put in the real work, right? So, but a lot of people will say, oh, well, I just want to, you know, lose some weight, so I'll do cardio. There's no point in me resistance training because I just want to lose body fat. I don't want to get muscle bound. Well, when we look at things like high intensity interval training versus steady state cardio, there's research that shows subjects who sprint 30 seconds, 4 rounds, so what is that, 2 minutes total? 3 times a week, add that up, versus a group that's jogging 30 to 60 minutes 3 times a week, add that up. Yeah. The group sprinting lost twice as much body fat.
And that was just sprinting, like not
just
sprinting. And really, wow.
30 seconds, they had 4 minutes of rest, and they repeated the 30-second sprints 4 times. Right. Or no, 2 to 3 times. 2 or 3 times, right? For 3 times a week. The other group, 30 to 60 minutes of running.
Gee.
So how is that possible? It's because you burn more fat the rest of the day than your workout. So, you know, we typically look at the workout as, well, how much did you burn, right? Yeah. So you get on the treadmill and I burned 800 calories, right? It's really the wrong way to look at it, because your body reacts to the workout because it has to recover, right? And so we know that if you go in and do a very easy workout, your post-recovery, it won't require that much, right? If you go in and do a very intense workout, the rest of the day, your body needs to recover from that workout. And recovery is a fuel-burning process, right? It requires fuel. So the rest of the day, you're burning more fat,
right,
to fuel the recovery that needs to take place from your workout. So the fat loss isn't coming from the actual time in the moment you're in the gym. It's coming when you're not in the gym.
Right.
And so, you know, if you kind of remember, since you've been in this business a while, like I have, do you remember the fat burning zone? that
Yeah.
everybody should be doing cardio in?
Yeah,
Slow and steady,
Yeah.
because it's a higher percentage of fat, but it's lower total calories, right? And we find that when you go at too low of intensity, it doesn't matter if you went for 6 hours, your recovery is, like I said, is so minimal compared to if you went in there and sprinted for 5 minutes. You would burn more fat the rest of the day than if you walked for an hour. 5 minutes of sprinting would burn you more fat the rest of the day than an hour of walking.
Right.
So again, it's back to when you talk about fat loss, it's a long way to say it,
Right.
to get this, is why are you looking at just cardio? Because weight training is a more intense form of exercise, and as I said, cardio only works half the body. So if you want to burn more total calories, it makes more sense to use more muscle mass. How do you use more muscle mass? It's not running, because half the body isn't working. It's not sitting on a bike. It's training, right? And we know, like I said, the more intense the training, the better the burn after the workout. So you're going to lose more fat from weight training because it doesn't burn more fat while you're doing it. It burns more fat after while you're recovering.
Right.
And so particularly if you use something like full body training where you're going in and not just training chest. If you're going in and training just chest, right?
Right, when I
How much
started, I used to
recovery,
do
right? Yeah.
chest and back and biceps. And
Right?
Yeah.
But if you went in and trained chest and back and biceps and shoulders, right? Now all those muscles have to recover.
Right, yeah.
And you turned on all the metabolic genes in all those tissues, meaning you're training them to burn fat. Why are athletes leaner? It's not just about all the activity that they do. It's about what that activity does to their body. It trains their body to use fuel better,
So what you're saying is that it's kind of explosive high bursts, sort of shorter high bursts of all body, ideally.
Yes, yeah.
Using all the muscles in kind of short
To
bursts.
sum it up, it can't be easy. I'm sorry. No. We know this, right? We remember the old debate. Does it make any difference if you run the mile or you walk the mile? Right? It just takes longer to walk. You still have to do the same amount of work, right?
Right.
So the exercise scientists in the 80s said, same thing. We now know that's not true. If you run that mile, what is it going to do to your metabolic system versus walking the mile? It's going to train it much more differently, right?
Yeah.
High intensity interval training isn't just best for fat loss, it's also best for your heart because it puts it at a better challenge. When you challenge those tissues, what happens? It's not just about structural, right? When you train a muscle, it's not just about, oh, now it's bigger. It's about the metabolic processes in that muscle. It can use fat better. It can use glucose better. That means the fat's not going to be stored on your body and in your arteries, right? That means that glucose isn't going to get turned into fat and then stored on your body. And it's not, like I said, we think of exercise as a results only. Well, the physical results, right? Well, look at, you're lifting weights to get bigger muscle. No, you're lifting weights to get better muscles. Right? You want all your muscles in your body better. You want all your muscles using fat better, knowing how to use glucose better. That's what's going to prevent obesity. That's what's going to prevent heart disease, right? That's what's going to prevent those metabolic disorders, type 2 diabetes. It's training every muscle tissue in your body, not so that it just looks better, but so that it performs better. From a metabolic standpoint.
So and I know there's not a sort of one size fits all, but if there was a kind of a kind of an ideal, look, this is a kind of a get out of jail card for your body, then are you saying it's, go into the gym, train all your body, sort of push it within your own limits, obviously safely,
of
but
course.
Push it as
what's intense for you is different from what's intense for me.
Right.
When I say intense, training, I don't mean look at my training and, oh my, he's got 4 plates, I have to put, no, put 1 plate for you is going to be just as intense, right? Like I said, 3 to 5 reps for an old lady is not going to be 400 pounds. It might just be the bar, right? But as long as her form, as you instruct her properly, there's no problem in her doing 3 to 5 reps, proper form, as long as she's had some time to learn the exercise.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And you said about like you recovering in the day. Is there a time of day, like I used to train out in the mornings because that's how things worked out. Now I'm over here, it's more difficult to train in the morning, so I have to do it in the evenings. Do those rules apply if you train different times of day, or is it different if you work out in the evening?
No, there's a lot of research on time of day training. And one of the things that we do know about time of day is performance. We know that the body performs better in the afternoon, sometime around, at least past 2, closer to 4, 5 p.m. The body typically performs better. Most people, most humans are stronger, perform better on mental tasks as well. So a lot of people thought, well, that means you should train because you should train when you're at your strongest. Doesn't really pan out. As long as you train consistently, it really doesn't matter if you train morning or nighttime. It's really about the consistency. So there's really very little difference. But back to the cardio thing, one of the things that I wanted to say about the full body training is, I suffered a quadriceps tear, a complete tear. It was severed right off the bone. I had 4 surgeries. So this was beginning of 2017. So in 2017, it was in January. So between January and May, I had 4 surgeries on my knee. So I wasn't doing any cardio. Nor could I do cardio while I was recovering. So for most of 2017, I did 0 cardio. And the only thing I could do was full body training, right? So I could go in, and it wasn't even full body, it was like 3/4 because I couldn't do anything with this leg. So I just did resistance training, full body every day
Every day?
Every day, full body. Just one exercise per muscle. Sometimes, I'd mix it up.
Right. And how long was that workout last?
Maybe 45 minutes to an hour.
Right.
And I gained no body fat despite going from a time where I was running. I would go hiking, I would run at night, I would run the streets here, I biked everywhere. I'm known for cardiac acceleration, doing cardio in between. You do bench press and you do bench step ups, then back to, I couldn't do any of that. All I did was full body training. And if I'm live, I'm on social media all the time, so there's no way to hide, my physique. And despite no cardio, just full body training, I gained no body fat.
And what about your muscle conditioning? How did that?
And that maintained. Because I was doing the resist. Obviously, I can't squat heavy, or my legs size decreased and whatnot. But generally speaking, my physique changed very little.
Wow. And will you change your diet through that period as well, at all much?
Not much.
No,
not much.
Interesting.
But again, it goes to show you that, when it comes to fat loss, here wasn't a case of should I do cardio or weights. I can't do any cardio. Does that mean I'm going to get fat? No. I was able to maintain 4 to 5% body fat with no cardio, just through the full body training. Because again, what is going on? I'm activating all those muscle fibers every day. So now all those metabolic genes are turned on, right? I'm burning fat, utilizing glucose, and I'm recovering all those muscle fibers every day. Right. So what is a better way to burn fat? I would say weight training.
And you say about
honestly, yeah.
And what about rest? Because you said you're training every day. That seems to some people that's like overtraining. You know,
Sure, yeah.
How do you deal with that?
You know, I'm a big proponent of if you think you're overtrained, talk to a professional athlete. Our bodies are designed to get up and survive until nightfall, and then we hide because we want to survive, right? Then we get up and we do it again, right? Our bodies aren't designed to get up, sit down at the table, have a bowl of cereal handed to us, and then food is just thrown into our bodies have not evolved past waking up going, where am I getting my food? And how am I not dying, right? By the end of today. We have not evolved past that. So, you know, our bodies are really designed to work all day long. So if you think that sitting in your car and commuting to work for an hour, and then sitting at your desk for 4 more hours, and then going to the gym at noon and lifting for an hour, and training too hard for that hour is going to throw you into overtraining. No, it doesn't happen that way. It's very difficult to overtrain. And overtraining is not, you can't just have a workout and now you're overtrained. Overtraining is a period of months. It takes months to get into a state of overtraining. But most people aren't overtrained. And you know, one of the things we talk about with recovery is, what is recovery? We don't know what recovery is. We don't. What is a recovered muscle? We don't know, right? The only way we can test that right now is, when does the strength come back? So what we'll do is we'll have somebody go and do 3 sets of 10 on the bench press to fatigue. And then we'll have them come in the next day and test them for their 10 rep max. They won't be able to get 10 with that weight because they're fatigued, right? They just did it. 2 days later, probably still won't be able to get 10 with that weight because they're still a bit fatigued. 3 days later, maybe they can get it. Now we say they're recovered. So all we know is that recovery is when your strength has returned to the original level. We don't know what's going on inside the muscle, what anything looks like inside in those 2 days. So what is recovery? Remember, we're talking about calves, right? Let's talk about somebody who lives in San Francisco, a very hilly place. They don't own a car. They probably walk 4 or 5 miles a day, uphill, downhill, day after day. How do their legs recover? Day after day. Shouldn't they not walk for 2-3 days after a full day of 4 to 5 miles of walking up hills? Right? Your legs would be destroyed, right? If you haven't walked 4 to 5 miles and then suddenly you had to walk 4 to 5 miles of hills, what would your legs feel like the next day? Like you just did a leg workout, right? So you better not walk, right? So if you live in San Francisco, you should only walk maybe 2 days, 3 days a week, because the rest of the days you should be recovering. So how does the human body do that? How are we able to walk the next day?
Right. Yeah.
No matter what the challenge is, right? Some people don't walk that much. Other people walk 20 miles a day.
Yeah.
How do they do that? Day after day. Shouldn't they take a day off? No, honestly, how do they do it?
Yeah, I guess so.
So what is recovery?
Yeah.
What is recovery? We don't know. Like I said, the field of exercise science is so new.
It's not proven.
We really don't know much. Yeah. The things, a lot of the laws that we follow, recovery, we don't even know what recovery is. We honestly don't. We're learning. We're learning.
Calves earlier, and like so, we were saying where I got married was Positano, and it's like steep hills, like
right.
So, and a lot of the old ladies who live at the top, they go up and down all the time to the shops and up and down, and you're right. You know, they probably
day after day,
done that for years.
Day after day, right? Yeah. How does the body recover? Yeah. Right? If you're telling me that the body needs 2 days to recover before you can train it again, or it's going to overtrain. How does that old lady do that? And I bet her legs are freaking amazing. Amazing. I bet she's got great, you know, I bet they've got amazing calves, amazing legs, and somehow they can train them every day. What is recovery? Seriously, what is recovery? We don't know.
No. It's interesting because I used to do squats. I like doing legs because my legs are not the strong part, but I enjoy them. And I used to do them once a week, and then I changed to do them sort of a bit like you most days. And I found when I first started it, I was actually getting stronger through my squats because I was doing it every day, which was quite weird than sort of doing it once a week. It would take me a while to kind of get back up to that weight, and quicker as well. I could sort of go up a lot quicker, which was, you know, unusual. But I think, I guess the key point that you've said, which I never was aware of before, is that the science behind it is still fairly new. I didn't realize that people have not studied this to that extent to really have these answers.
You know, I mean, the National Institutes of Health is not throwing millions of dollars so we can figure out how a Mr. Olympia can get bigger biceps. They're throwing out millions of dollars so we can prevent muscle diseases. What we learn from those studies, we go, oh, maybe that means this in the gym.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So do you think most of what we're learning is just handed down from kind of, you know, people who have got a bit of an idea to someone else who's got an idea to, so it's kind of based on more sort of what's happened in the gym and mythology as opposed to real science?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, what happens in the gym is a science too, right? I mean, it's hard to deny that if you came in and did the bench press for the most weight you could do on 1 rep every time, right? Eventually you would realize that's not the best way to get stronger, right? So then you would change it and go, okay, what if I came in and one day I did 10 reps, and then another day I did 5 reps, and then another day I did 1 rep, and not always 1 rep. So I'm changing. Then you'd say, oh my God, I'm getting stronger, right?
Yeah.
That's science, right? That's what science is, right? There's a problem, you tried the solution, it didn't work, you tried a different solution, that worked. Now let's fine tune that one, right? And let's keep building. You know, people like Joe Weider were doing science. They didn't have microscopes, right? They weren't cutting people open, they weren't looking inside the muscle tissue, but they were documenting, you do this, you get this. You superset, you get muscle and leaner. Hey, right? Okay, that's science. You know what I mean? It really is an N of only a few, right? And it's not a controlled setting, but it's still a science, right? How do we know, you know, how did we learn that willow bark could help with head pain? People started chewing on it, right? Right? That's science, right? Oh my God, this cures your head pain, right? That's a science. We only think about the science as, well, what is the molecule? Salicylic acid, that's in there. But before we knew that, people were smart enough to say, hey, if you take the bark off of this tree and chew on it, it'll cure your headache. That's a science, right? So.
And what's your approach then to science from sort of, you know, when people say, well, there's studies done or there's practical science where you're actually in a gym and it's like, look, you know, I've done this for a number of years, I've tried it with people, these are the results I'm getting, compared to having to have it being done in a controlled test. You know, where do you sit on that?
Yeah, so, you know, and like I said, you know, I was a research scientist, Yale School of Medicine, Department of Cellular Molecular Physiology. So when I talk about science, I understand what a controlled study is, why we need controlled studies. At the same time, I understand the flaws and the limits of a controlled study. For example, there was a study done, it was published in the International Society of Sports Nutrition on creatine. They wanted to see, is it better to take creatine before or after you exercise? Great question, right? To study that, you have to give only creatine, because if you give anything else, there's another variable that's hard to study. So they gave 5 grams of creatine monohydrate in a glass of water either before they worked out or after. And then they tried to see which one was better. Well, what's the problem? Creatine doesn't get taken up unless there's carbs.
Right.
You have to take creatine with carbs and hopefully protein to get an insulin spike, to get the creatine to go into the muscle for it to work. But because that would create other variables, they had to study it as just pure creatine, which doesn't tell us anything because nobody takes creatine that way. Right? So, I understand why we need research, but I also understand the limitations of the research. I also understand that you can create a study with bias going in to get results that you want.
Right. Yeah.
So not every study is a beacon of truth.
Yeah.
And a lot of studies, they don't even know what they're doing. Preexhaust. There's 2 studies published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research on Preexhaust. They had subjects come in and do flies before they did the bench press, and they measured EMG muscle activity, right? Versus doing just the bench press. So what would happen to the chest muscle activity if you did flies before the bench press? Well, they found that if you did flies before you did the bench press, when you do the bench press after you've done the flies, muscle activity of the pecs decreases. So Preexhaust doesn't work. They actually proved Preexhaust works. What is Preexhaust? You're trying to exhaust the pecs. What happens to the muscle activity when they're exhausted? It goes down. So they just proved what Preexhaust does. It pre-exhausts the pecs so that when you get to the bench press, it's the pecs that are exhausted. So when you hit failure, because they're so weak, you know it was because the pecs were fatigued, not the shoulders or the triceps.
Right.
So they proved Preexhaust worked, but they claimed it didn't work because they didn't know what Preexhaust is.
So what does the regular person do then? Like you're obviously a scientist.
So you can imagine, for me, how frustrating it is, right? Because people say, "Oh, well, is it a published study?" Because published studies are, have to be put up here on this mountain because they're published.
Right.
No, not all published studies are good. Also, what we see in the lab in the gym isn't bad. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? Do we need a study to prove that the barbell curl hits the biceps? Right? But we know it does, right? Because guys for years have done this exercise and it resulted in bigger biceps. Do we have to do an EMG study to know that the curl targets the biceps? Not really, right? So anecdotal evidence sometimes is better because, like I said, with creatine, for example, we don't know anything about that. Tells us nothing because nobody would take creatine that way. A better way would be give it to people in the gym the real way that they take it in bodybuilders. And the nice thing for me is I reach so many thousands of people that when I give a recommendation, hey guys, try the reverse grip bench press for your upper pecs. Do you know how many, it may be in the millions of people who have used that tip, right? And have reported now over decades the results, right? There's one study with 12 subjects that showed when they reversed their grip on the bench press, it increased upper pec muscle activity. Right. But I can show you thousands of people have been using this technique for years and have grown bigger upper pec because of it, right? What's more important? Right? What's more important to know? The study that showed the EMG data increased, or the people showing, hey, when you do this exercise repeatedly, over time, it actually does build up bigger, right?
I suppose if you're in a...
It's both.
Yeah, I suppose if you're in a business, which a lot of people are, they're opening gyms, they're training people, they're giving advice, then I guess it is a bit difficult because you are, it's like, who do you listen to? You've got the studies, okay, let's base everything we've done on on clinical studies. That's what we're going to do. But as you said, you know, you could end up doing that and finding out actually, you know, unless you fully understand the studies and the conditions and you really understand that, then maybe that's not a good idea. Then you could say, well, look, let's go down this road, which is practical. You know, who's doing it? You know, how much do they know? So it is very much a minefield, and there's so much, I guess, within the health and fitness and diet and nutrition. There's so much kind of smoke and mirrors as well. You know, people trying to peddle,
unfortunately,
this thing, and
that's you know, that's where the confusion really comes in, because it's confusing enough. Even if we're all just being honest and trying to teach people, right, the truth, it's confusing enough, right? Yeah. But then you have all these snake oil salesmen who really now, you know what I mean? Like, just, you know, really make it a, you know, shit show.
Particularly in this stuff behind us. You can make, you know, I guess it's like almost, well, I don't know what I compare it to, but like the amount of extra margin you can make by putting stuff that nobody would have a clue what's in it, just making it taste nice and claiming things which, from what I understand, even a lot of the studies in this are not really that good. You know, you can make a fortune if you've got a good name and a brand and a convincing personality. You can be making a huge amount and probably selling stuff to people that they don't need or could even do them damage. And I think particularly for younger people, you know, they will go and look at someone that has got the physique they want or the Instagram star, and they come out with a protein or a creatine, and you know, it could be quite bad for them. Even in our business, you know, simple things like rubber that they make the dumbbells in. You know, everybody calls it rubber. When you go out to China, you find out that it's not actually rubber. They're mixing all these different ingredients in it that bring the, you know, increase their margins, and it falls to pieces. You know, you don't know that unless you really understand the business. And then when you're trying to explain to someone that, well, you know, they are different, and this is what's going to happen.
Right.
It's
How
quite
come they can get
quite
it
a
for
lot
this
of work.
price over here? It's like, well, that one's going to fall apart.
Yeah, but they don't know that. It's like, well, that's cheaper. It looks the same. I'm going to go for that. So it's quite. Well, so what do you think? As you know, we should do as, you know, the credible people in the industry?
You know, as I tell the, you know, the people who follow me, you know, I feel for you, because it's so, like I said, even without the snake oil, it's confusing enough. You know what I mean? But you know, the thing that I remind people of is A, use common sense. B, what works for you. You know, like a lot of people will come to me and say, you know, Jim, I know you told me that I shouldn't do whatever at the start of my workout. However, I've been finding that when I do it at the start of my workout, I'm getting better results. Should I continue doing it that way? And I'm like, you just answered your own question. You're getting better results, okay? It doesn't matter what works for most people. You've just found what works for you, right?
Right.
So even if it goes against, you know, something that somebody else says, if it's working for you, it's working for you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if it's working, it's working. And so, you know, what I remind people is, don't just listen to me. Listen to everyone, and try to find what resonates with you, what seems to fit for you, what works for you, and, you know, maybe something that I say isn't best for you, and you need to manipulate it. Even though it works for other people, maybe it's not the best thing for you. You have to find what works, you know, best for you. Training program, nutrition, you know, and, you know, it's really consistency is the key. If you're just consistent, you know, if you're really, you know, everybody's like trying to find like the secret. It's like, be consistent. Don't stop, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're telling me you want the best fat loss program, right? Well, what happened to the one you did before, right? Why didn't you keep the fat off, right? You're putting the fat back on. So keep it, you know, just keep it off.
Yeah. Sometimes I guess, you know, just
consistent.
There's no magic pill.
There's no, exactly. You know, like, of course, I mean, I have a lot of tips and tricks that can make it easier.
Right.
But if you know nothing about exercise or nutrition and just use common sense and be consistent, you know,
you're going to make a lot of progress.
You know, if you go to the gym and do something every day, you're probably going to make some kind of progress, right?
Yeah.
However, if you think you have the perfect program and you only do it for a week, what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, you have to do the full program. So just do something that's going to keep you consistent. And it doesn't, you know, as I tell everybody, it doesn't even have to, maybe it's not weight training. Maybe you like rock climbing. Maybe you know, I mean, find activities that are going to keep you active. Hopefully it's working the majority of the muscles in the body, but at least find something that keeps you wanting to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's really about the consistency.
I think that's the thing. You know, nowadays in the world as it is, everybody thinks there's a shortcut to a six-pack or to a great relationship or even a business. And I guess
I want the secret.
They want the secret. And I've not really met anyone that's had the secret.
There's no secret.
There is no secret. That's the secret.
The secret is the consistency. You know, right?
It's just putting in the work.
It's the consistency. It is in everything. You know, there's no shortcut.
Yeah. So coming on to business then, like we've sort of been interesting conversation, but I wanted to talk about the business side. So how did you? So you're a research scientist at Yale. How did you go from that into becoming an entrepreneur then? Because that's quite a jump. What was that? How did that story start?
Sure. Although I think you know, I think a lot of scientists start in science and make a jump. You know, sort of a discovery or something of that sort of nature. But my venture is a bit different. I sort of was always involved in weightlifting and bodybuilding because I read the magazines. That's where I really got my initiated my interest in science. You know, I was reading muscle fiber types in in these muscle magazines. You know, my God, there's different muscle fiber types. You know. And so I sort of wanted to give back, you know what I mean? What inspired me and so I literally cold called Muscle and Fitness, sent them a few articles that I had written based on some of the research that I was doing in the lab and how it could apply to the gym. They loved it. As I said, I read a lot as a kid, so I had a interest in writing. I had a minor, when I got my degree in exercise science as an undergrad, I had a minor in English as well. So I loved to write. And so they loved the work, and I started writing for the magazines while I was at Yale. And eventually they asked me, would you ever consider leaving academia to become our science editor? They were looking for over a year. They could not find the right person. I mean, it really takes a very specific type of person, a broad range of knowledge, because you're basically, at least the way I approached the job was, the magazine is a manual. We're teaching people consistently how to train, get better, eat better. Our message has to be consistent. We can't tell them 1 month, don't eat any carbs, and then the next month, low carb diets are dangerous, right? We have to be consistent. And so, I understood what the role was, and so I flew out to LA. We met, I left academia. All my colleagues at Yale were like, you're going to work, do what? And I'm like, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. This is what I was meant to do. And so I left academia. I mean, I had just won at the American Physiological Society the Gatorade Young Investigator Award for the research I was doing on the skeletal muscle genes. So people thought, how could you be leaving academia when, you know what I mean, you have this career ahead of you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to work for these fitness magazines.
And what did you do? Did you just feel that was the right decision to make?
When I was at Yale, I was, being groomed, to be a researcher. And one of the things that they were grooming me for was the politics. And that was my first sort of, wait, there's politics to getting funded? It's not just the best Grant, I'm supposed to sit with this person. And so I started getting, you know, a little distaste for the politics. But the other thing is that I would see all this research on creatine, and I couldn't focus on that because I had to focus on my area to get the grants, right? And so I felt like I was missing out on a lot of research. And so I saw this as a way to sort of bridge the gap between what's going on in the lab and how to apply it. Because there was really nobody who sort of understood both realms, you know what I mean? And so I saw this as a really good opportunity to take, you know, all these broad interests that I had. You know, I mean, I studied genetics, you know, biochemistry, biomechanics, you know, all these interests, and sort of make sure that that message that we were giving out was a consistent message month after month.
Yeah.
And it changed as the science changed.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, you have to look at it, I guess, as one complete.
Exactly. And so, you know, so I really saw the opportunity there to do something that nobody really had, because my colleagues in science, you know, if you interview a scientist, right, they've got some new discovery, right? And then the researcher says, so this means everybody should be eating broccoli? And the scientist says, no, I'm not suggesting that. We're just saying that we saw. You know, none of these scientists wanted to really say, yeah, that's what you should be doing. Right. Give it a try, right? We saw it in the lab. Why not? Try eating more broccoli. You know what I mean? Yeah. Nobody wanted to say that. And so I really saw the opportunity to say, hey, this group over here found that when you do this, so maybe when you're doing the bench press, try it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
do you think you're more of a kind of like a voice, a connection of what was happening in the science to then kind of interpret in a way that people could apply it?
Yes, that's the important thing, is to take what it means and how to sort of filter it into a usable piece of information.
Yeah.
You know, what does this mean when I'm in the gym? You know, and then that was my strength. You know what I mean? Everybody saw that, and that's why people started to follow me. And then when social media took off, I was at the magazines, and well, actually even before social media, when the internet took off. I mean, this goes back to 2002. Really think about how new the internet is.
Yeah.
2002. There was no real muscle and fitness online, and so the publishers thought that the online world would cannibalize magazines, so they were resistant to doing anything online. And I thought that was crazy, because online you could do video, you could teach people so much better. So I thought, okay, if the magazine's not going to do it, I'm going to do it myself. So I created my own website with my business partner, because I saw video as a much better way. If you're going to try to teach somebody how to do a bench press in a magazine, all we have is a before and an after in words.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we can literally show them with video now and explain all the steps. This is like being a personal trainer right there, you know?
So we're just staying on that for a moment then, because there's I guess, and I'm not saying you're sort of older, because I'm also in that category.
Oh, I'm older, yeah.
But a lot of
I don't mind saying.
But you know, the kind of like, you know, people in their early 20s and teens, they obviously take to, you know, they've been brought up, they've developed businesses similar to yourselves through the internet, and using social media, and we probably didn't come up in that way, and I suppose a lot of businesses that are run by people our age have sort of struggled to make that shift. You know, muscle and fitness, they're like, well, look, we want to stay away from that because that's going to destroy what we're doing. So there's almost a fear. What caused you to sort of embrace it and be one of the few people in this space that are kind of older than, I don't want to sort of play on this age thing, but are older than people that have kind of, you know, made it there. And, you know, what made you think that you need to do that to sort of get where you are? Because not many people do that even now.
Yeah, so it wasn't really, there was no real, like, get where I am. It was more about, I saw this as a good opportunity to educate. You know, one of the things that I really took home with me is when Tim and I were at University of Connecticut getting our PhD, there was a course you had to take on getting your PhD. They gave us a course on getting, no, seriously. They gave, and they taught us things like, it's like getting your black belt. Like, you're getting your PhD, you're just starting. You don't walk out of here thinking you're now a genius. Now you've been handed the reins to learn. You know, like you've got a black belt. Now you really can learn martial arts.
You just start.
Okay? You know, so that's one of the things. The other thing I learned was we were told you have a massive responsibility on your shoulders. You know things that other people do not know, and it's your job to share them with as many people who will listen. That's your challenge. And so I really, you know, for whatever reason, really took that message.
Right.
And so as a matter of fact, we were just looking at the old Weider workout programs, and and I was talking with Tim about the way he showed the exercise. He could only show one photo. How was he going to demonstrate what he needed to? He drew a circle around the joints that were the movers, you know, because he wanted to educate. That's what his interest was. How can I better teach people how to weight train? And really that's my goal is every day is I use these different media to better educate. So when I saw what was capable with video, better way to educate, right?
Right.
If you had to teach somebody how to tie your shoe, would you write how to tie your shoe or would you just show them?
Yeah.
Video allows you to show.
Right.
You know, and with weight training, it's important. It's a skill that we're trying to teach. So
and just
I saw that right away.
And one more on that then. So when things like Instagram came along,
yes.
what were you?
I mean, that's a whole nother. I mean, that's like two big births in, you know, just in media in general.
Yeah. So So did you kind of think? I guess how did you approach that? Were you fairly early to adopt it and say, look, this is an even better way. I need to get involved.
Yeah.
And right.
So even before I, you know, this is sort of, you know, one of the main reasons why the supplement brand is so successful is because of the trust that people have in what I do and what I build and everything that I teach them. It works, right? I give them a tip, it works. How to get bigger, it works. How to get leaner, it works. How to get faster, it works, right? So, you know, over and over again, they're getting this free advice from me and it keeps working, right? So they trust me.
Right.
And a lot of the information that I was giving out was on supplements. At a time, I didn't have anything to sell.
Oh, okay. So that was before you.
So when Twitter came out, remember it was really like Twitter was and Facebook, right? Before Instagram. So I took to Facebook and Twitter as a way to educate people. With Facebook, I could post videos so I could show people. And then on Twitter, I was using it as a Q&A. So people would ask, how do I take creatine? You know, and I was just hungry to get people answers because there's so much confusion out there, right? There's so much confusion. And so I just wanted to sort of help and as many people as I could sort of cut through the nonsense. And social media was the best way. And like I said, I wasn't selling anything. I was just there to help people get an answer. And so over the years of people seeing that and saying, hey, this guy's just answering me because he cares that I get the results. You know what I mean? Because it's me that, you know, I was the one reading the magazine. If I was 13 years old right now, I would be on Instagram following some, you know, fitness expert, right? So, like I said, I see that the responsibility that I have to educate as many people who will listen as a, you know, it's a big responsibility. And so, like I said, I use, anytime there's a new way to reach people, I try to find a way that I can use it to educate. It's not, you know, it's not to sell. I mean, sure, there's a, you know, I have a business end, you know, but, you know, that I'm, you know, I don't, the nice thing is with the business is I don't have to worry so much about the selling. You know what I mean? Because, you know, I have a sales team for that. I can just focus on the education. And that's what really keeps it real, because we have to sell, right? I mean, to be able to keep doing this, the business has to be lucrative. But the nice thing is, for me, I don't have to get bogged down on the sales. I can just get focused on telling the truth, which helps the sales.
So how much, if we're talking purely business now then, so how important is it to have built, how many years have you had your brand, by the way?
I launched July of 2013.
Right, okay. So how important
So
was...
a little over 5 years.
5 years. How important was what you do in front of a camera, social media, building the brand, asking questions? Do you think, how important was that to have done this? And do you think it would have been where it was now if you'd have just said, okay, I'm a scientist, I've got a supplement range, and you kind of went and put it in GNC or wherever? What's your thoughts on those two approaches to building a brand and selling
of how I sort of waited?
Yeah, because at the moment
I'm not waited. It just, you know, I really never had, you know, like I said, I took that message about the responsibility to educate as many people very, very seriously, and so it's, you know, a lot of people will ask, like, well, how did you get to where you are? And I'm like, where am I? There was no plan. You know what I'm saying? The plan was just to educate people, and luckily people loved the education that they got, and, you know, continue to follow me. And like I said, I had no intention to ever create a supplement line, because I know many supplement company owners. It's not as easy as it looks. You know, it's not an overnight success. Most of the supplement brands that you see now, I know the years that they spent, many, many years on the road going store to store. It's not easy.
So there's a huge amount of capital in marketing.
I had no interest in it. I'm not a businessman. You know, I'm not really a businessman. I'm an educator. So I never really had a true interest in that. However, because I was known as this sort of supplement expert, and people would always come to me, and I was working for the magazines, I was reviewing these supplements. And prior to probably 5 or 6 supplements, prior to that, were, you would go buy arginine or you would buy leucine, right? There weren't pre-workouts, you know, you'd buy a whey protein, you know, there weren't, you know, fat burners. You would go buy acetyl L-carnitine in green tea extract and make, you know what I mean? That's what supplements were, right? Then the pre-workouts came out. And one of the things that I've been telling the reader all these years about supplements is they work if you use the right ingredient at the right dose at the right time. All the supplements that I had to start reviewing now suddenly had no dosing. And so I would contact these companies and say, how much creatine? Oh, we can't tell you that. What do you mean you can't tell me that? Sometimes they wouldn't even know, because a lot of companies don't make their own, they just have the money and then they get somebody else to manufacture it and get it, right? So they don't even know. They couldn't tell me. So I'm like, how can I tell people what products to take if I don't know what the amount of creatine, beta-alanine, branched chain amino acids are? And you can't just take a little bit. And so I realized that what was going on was, you know, the supplement industries were literally screwing people and taking proprietary blends because it's your secret KFC formula. No, it's just they don't want anybody to realize that they're not really putting a decent amount of the ingredient in there. And so as an athlete, you know, I was somebody who had to look, you know, I practice what you preach. If you, you know, don't tell me how to get bigger biceps if you don't have biceps, right? Don't tell me how to get shredded if you're not shredded. So I was very concerned because I'm taking product that I'm thinking I'm getting this much protein, and turns out it's spiked with crap. And so I'm personally pissed off because I can't trust any of the product that I'm getting. And so I started making my own, like small batch stuff. And I would teach people online. Pre-gym, you can pretty much see if you go back
I've seen
over a
some of the
decade
other
ago,
YouTube.
you can see add this much creatine hydrochloride, this much branch chains, this much beta-alanine, this much betaine, and mix it. Tasted like crap, right? But everybody loved it because they were getting great results, you know? And so, you know, that's the people, when they saw the product, they saw this is what he's been recommending just now in one bottle for me.
Right.
And so they really saw it as sort of, you know, obviously there's people that are skeptical and say, oh, you're a sellout, you just did that to make money. But there are the people that really honestly view this as a gift that I've given them, that I've taken the time to put all the ingredients that I've been recommending that they take to get those results that they've been getting, and now you can just go and buy it and easy and get it shipped to your house.
Yeah.
You know, so most people honestly view it as a gift. There's still people who are skeptical. Skepticism is good though, because
Keeps you honest.
that's what that's what I preach against. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
You should be skeptical.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of crap. There's a lot of crap,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But like I said, confusing as it is, even if we went back to, you know, pre-1980s when a supplement store was a little mom and pop shop and you just walked in and they'd, here, try arginine. Yeah, if you take 4 grams a day, it'll work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it was hard enough then knowing, but now with all the, you know, microdosing and proprietary blends, it makes it impossible for people.
So I guess with your business and so it sounds like you had your message, which is to kind of spread, you know, what you've learned to as many people as possible. That seems to be one of your key values that you aim to do. And then what you've done is you've kind of put a business on top of that, which, okay, it's good because it's a, you know, business is generating income, which is the purpose of it. But it sounds like you're also providing a lot of value to the people who buy it, because it's, you know, they, at least you're able to give them something that you're confident is the right thing for them to take in the right doses. With, you know, you're giving them delivering a quality product, and you're educating them at the same time.
Right. Yeah. I'm giving them the product I take myself. Literally, I designed these. You know, the testosterone booster. I'm 50 years old, right? What am I going to take for a testosterone booster? You know, why would I make it anything less so that I would have to go buy something else?
Right.
Right? Just make it yourself. So you are getting, you know, exactly what I make for myself. But, you know, like you said, the business is important because it allows the education. If I didn't make any income, I wouldn't be able to afford the space where I do the lives to educate, you know, people. I'm here live several times a week doing exercise tutorials, you know, on my free time. Yeah. You know, but that's giving back because I have this space. If I didn't have the business, I wouldn't be able to do a live at 4:30 in the afternoon because I wouldn't have an empty gym to be able to do that to. So
do you think you're now at a stage where you've been able to combine your mission with your business and your mission of sort of come together and in terms of serving people and helping people? Do you think that's where you are now in your life, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and just continuing to perfect that, you know, like I said, I hope people truly see that, you know, the business end is, it's not, you know, people say, oh, you're a sellout, but hey, I hope, you know, the majority of people do understand that the supplements are, you know, a educational tool themselves. You know, I'm teaching people what to look for in supplements, so I made sure the easiest way is, there you go. This is what to look for in the supplements, but that they also understand that the business is necessary for the education, right? I mean, if I wasn't making income on this, I wouldn't be able to educate them. I'd have to be doing a job to pay the bills, which means I wouldn't be able to pop on at 4:30 and do a live on how to do the bench press for them for free. You know what I mean? So the business and is, you know, it's critical. The business has to keep going so that you can keep the education going. But again, it's, you know, the education that's driving the business, which is really nice. Is there's two ways that you can look at a business. You could either looking at as a marketing business, right, or as a service. Are you really providing a service, or is you just providing something that you can market the crap out of and sell a lot of? Or do you actually have something that provides, like you said, value in service? And so it's nice to feel that your business is actually providing a value in a, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. It's not like you're, I don't know. It's not like you're just selling something just to sell. I mean, there's.
Well, we do this with this podcast. We took a lot of money from traditional adverts and advertising, and like this is a big cost. I'm running the business. We've got a team of people behind here. Of course. And
I understand.
And your time.
I understand what this is.
It's a big thing, and for me, it's almost like, well, look, okay, I couldn't do this if it wasn't for the business, but we've got a lot of people and customers and trainers and people coming into our part of the industry, and I personally feel good that we're able to sit down with people like you and to share or inspire people to go and do something, and if I think this is good use of some of the profits that we're making to invest in doing that. Yes, okay, it's creating more awareness for our brand, but we're not selling out, we're not selling products.
No, exactly. Yeah.
But it's we're helping improve the industry, and some of the stuff we've talked about today, I feel is benefit for so many people, because they're gonna, one, they probably inspired by your story, and two, they've probably hopefully learned a lot about it. And I think nowadays, more with technology and the cost, you couldn't have afforded to do this 10 or 15 years ago, but I think the cost to produce things is a lot more affordable. And I think there's an opportunity for businesses now to be a little bit different than probably what they were 20 years ago.
I mean, the fitness industry is completely different. Like you said, with the social media, before, the only way you could become a fitness expert is you had to get into the magazines. Really, you know what I mean? That was your one avenue, right? You had to get into the fitness magazines or some form of media, right? That was your only way. And to do that, there's a gate. It's not just, hey, I want to go do that. It's, hey, are they going to let me in?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The same thing with the record industry. Before YouTube, you know what I mean? It was, hey, will you let me in to record a record? No matter how good I am, right? There's still
and there's rules. It's like whether you fit into...
And there's politics.
Yeah, there's politics, that's right, yeah.
Now the nice thing is I can build a business with a zero marketing budget. All social media.
Yeah. But you've not, I guess...
I spent zero.
Yeah.
We spent zero on marketing.
Yeah.
Zero.
But I think what you've done, and this is a bit that I think is important to probably capture, is that I think a lot of traditional businesses would have spent tens, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions in terms of marketing, which doesn't really benefit anyone apart from the companies that are facilitating, advertising or promotion, or whatever. What I think you've done is that you've put that same amount of time and energy and money and said, look, I'm going to actually use it in this direction. I'm going to help and train and educate and make things better. And as a result of that, people are going to you're building a good business. And I think that's probably a better way for everybody. It's going to screw up a lot of the traditional businesses because they're used to saying, well, look, I'm just going to outspend them. I'll chuck $1 million, sponsor this person.
But you're just formula. You have this much for marketing, this, this much for R&D, this.
So it's a very different model, and there are a few people doing it. But I just think it's so much better for people. They're learning. That you're very open. Looking at the stuff you do on YouTube, you're very open. You're not, everything's on view.
Yeah.
There's no secrets.
No.
And so many businesses now, it's, as you say, you don't know what's in it. You don't know how much you should take. You don't know where they make it. And almost like that's a good thing for them to keep it that way, isn't it?
Right, yeah, it is.
They don't want to know who's behind it.
No, you don't.
And there's probably a lot of overweight people around the table thinking, great, we're, we're selling a load of this shit.
Exactly.
So I think it's a great approach, and you know, it sounds like it's a recipe that actually works as well. You know.
Yeah, luckily, yeah. So I guess I wouldn't be here. So, well, that's the nice thing is, you know, it just sort of took off. You know, it just sort of built on its own.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Although it wasn't.
There was never really a plan. You know, like.
Although listening to you talk, it sounds like there was a very clear plan. You know, that plan wasn't to build a multi-million-dollar business. That plan was I think it was a great plan, which was you had a message and you wanted to share that. You saw technology, you utilized that technology to continue with that message, and you then felt the need that, okay, you know, what's out there isn't great, and you went and developed something that would help the people that are quite confused. And I think that's a great story. You know?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
One you could certainly feel good about. So last two more questions, because I know you've probably got to get on. But so what's next for you? You know, you've certainly come a long way and achieved a lot. What's next on your list of goals or ambitions that you've not achieved yet?
Well, like I said, there's not really much of a plan, so it's just it's just to continue, you know, speak to as many people who are willing to, you know, listen. Just continue educating.
Yeah.
You know, the nice thing about having the gym now is it allows me to do more, you know, creative stuff with equipment and stuff. So might be, you know, working on, you know, some more actual equipment stuff. You know, that sort of stuff. I'm getting more into more of the biomechanics now that I have this facility. So playing around with some stuff. So
nice.
You may see some equipment from me.
Yeah. So watch this space on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And final question then. So escape your limits is about escaping what either you've believed has been impossible, some kind of mental limit, or what other people may have said is impossible. What would be an example, a recent example that you could think of where you've escaped your own personal limits?
That's a great question. You know, I know what it is, actually. In Tim here, he can kind of chuckle at this one. I'm a very introverted person. I'm not.
Really?
I'm not a public speaking type of person. So if you ever attended some of my old talks at like the NSCA, they were horrific. I mean, you should see the reviews that people would. Yeah, this is back, you know, when I was just probably either still in doctoral school or just out of school. So I was not great at public speaking. It was definitely something that I always had, you know, fear with, you know, and even like grade school, you know, having to go up and do a book report is something that I'm not comfortable with. Today, you know, I'm constantly on camera speaking, you know, to thousands of people. That's definitely something that has that I have worked on and has changed. And it's really interesting because, like I said, it was a pretty big fear. And I was a pretty terrible public speaker, which you would probably never get. I mean, if you saw me,
I saw you at
Fit
Expo, and
you would probably never get, never ever have a guess. So I think that's probably one of the limits that I've escaped, is that sort of fear. But I think it's really, you know, I mean, there's practice, just doing it over and over again. But I also think it just comes with the confidence that you get over, you know, just time of doing what you're doing and knowing that, you know, you're making a difference and people appreciate it. So, you know, so I think, you know, going to speak at an NSCA when you're just some doctoral student who, you know, oh, who's this guy coming up, versus, you know, when I go do a speaking gig now, they're there because they want to come hear me speak. And so I think that changes the confidence level as you're going on that stage. You know, the people are there for a different reason.
Right.
But yeah, so I would say
that's a good one. I've heard that a lot. And me personally, I remember the first time I did it, I was terrified of standing on a stage, even to a few small people, even like 5 or 6. And then the camera thing was terrifying.
It's funny,
and it was also terrible when I did it early. But what caused you to?
Yeah, you should watch my old muscle fitness raw videos. They're pretty funny.
What was it that? And some people sort of stay there. It's like, well, look, I don't like it. It's uncomfortable. I'm crap at it. I'm just not going to do it. What caused you to say, well, I'm going to continue to? I believe I can get better. And what caused you to push on and push through that fear?
It's really just that drive to educate, you know? I mean, if I was going to be a better educator, I had to get better at, you know, the speaking and the way I organized information. But, you know, I mean, that's just that's really my overall driving goal is I always approach it as how can I better educate? How can I make this message more, you know, easily digestible? How can I make it, how can I teach them how to do the bench press in a better form? You know, because I've tried every other form and people still have issues. What is the next thing that we can do? What's the next angle, the next way to do it, the next, you know, media, who knows? But I think that's really why, you know, that constant drive to just educate, and it sort of erases that fear. You know what I mean? It's almost like, because I would watch the old videos and know I sounded horrible, but the information was so good. You know what I'm saying? So I was just like hopeful that, okay, I sound like a robot, but hopefully you'll love what I said about creatine. And really they did. You know, despite as bad as I was, you know, they loved the information. And so, you know, I think the fact that, you know, people were surprisingly patient with me. You know, very few people would go on and just bash me about, you sound like a robot, you sound, you know, I mean, every once in a while there'd be like, but the majority of the people really appreciated the information, and I think that's what kept me coming back. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, wow, okay, they do appreciate it. As bad as this is, you know what I mean? And then just over time, that confidence in knowing that they are appreciating the information allows you to keep doing it, and then you just hone, you know, you hone your skill. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe being a perfectionist, like you said you are, also you're probably more critical than most people because they probably don't see what you see.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well.
That's true. Right.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Jim, it's a great story. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to listen to this again.
I love what you're doing. So,
and thank you very much for your time, and best wishes for spreading that message.
My pleasure. Thanks for.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.